Hello and welcome to episode 57 of Prose. This week, define home and confront some roaches and maybe even an incoming terror or two in the continuation of Jack Lee's Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo. I do want to toss a few quick updates out while I have your ear. Firstly, for those that follow us on Instagram, you have seen that I have been purchasing some new equipment to upgrade the Prose studio, particularly in the hope of beginning to produce all sounds and music in-house. You'll be hearing those sounds in the next 4 to 8 weeks of production. Be kind as I learn. Secondly, I am reevaluating my hosting service for my website, so prosepodcast.com might see some major fluctuations or just out-and-out changes in the next month or 3 or 4. Thirdly, as you might notice, today's episode is all in one big piece. I'm experimenting with this long format at the behest of several of you listeners and, believe it or not, a potential advertiser or two. Let me know what you think about this instead of my usual format, which was initially invented because of listener requests. You can do this by chatting with me through social media or emailing the show directly at prosepodcast@gmail.com. Which brings me to my final message. If you've not yet followed the show on social media, please do so on any and all platforms under the name @ProsePodcast. The best way to really help the show, though, is leaving a rating and review at iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, or on any podcast service. Ratings and reviews are what help others find our little podcasting family. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, the RSS feed, or whatever podcast catcher or method is your favorite. Thanks for listening and for bracing yourself for all these new updates. Let's get to the tales, shall we? This week, we have Where You Come From and Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo, parts 23 and 24, Reinforcements and Shield. Enjoy. Where You Come From. A short story by Jared I. McGee. Clichés and canned adages are often quite problematic. The one that drove Robert particularly mental were actually two conflicting nuggets of knowledge that everyone loved to toss about. Cliché number 1. You can never leave your home, and your home never leaves you. Cliché number 2. Once you leave home, you can never go back again. When he heard either of these, he always wanted to shout, rant, and rave. Luckily, he didn't usually encounter them being used in conjunction. They were antonymous, after all. Still, the two opposing concepts didn't make him feel any less isolated and alone moving through the world. To be sure, his Cajun South Louisiana hybrid drawl had lessened over his 10 years in LA, slowing and molding and evolving in the warmth of the California sun, but it was still there. Certain words and phrases still had their lilt, their swampy slowness. To be sure, the California kings and queens that he now tried his best to run with could peg him as an outsider any day, all day, even with his masked accent. The way he moved, ate, dressed, thought, the way he everythinged, screamed, "I am not one of you," and that certainly set him apart. The accent and the manner were two of a near infinite number of elements of Louisiana that just wouldn't say quit. They might be watered down a bit, but they definitely were not dissipating entirely. You can never leave your home, and your home never leaves you. Could actually not be more true for Robert. The yin to that yang, unfortunately, proved true for him as well. Admittedly, he didn't get down home to Marigold all too often these days, but he did get back for 10 days at Christmas time at the barest of bare minimums each and every year. rolling back down into the swampland he called home, being cloaked in honeysuckle and cleansed by magnolia upon entering his zip code. It all made his heart swell and made him think maybe having left Marigold, Louisiana, his family in the South, was a monumental mistake. That feeling only continued to grow as he rolled up to the old Delacroix homestead, if that was a bit grandiose for a double wide on a little bit of land near the bayou. Hugs from his family saw that feeling burgeon. Waves from all the old neighbors, their eyes beaming with pride that the native son that had gone off to the land of magic had returned home, saw that feeling wax even further. That feeling of being really and truly home, and of really truly belonging, threatened to drown him right along with the honeysuckle and the magnolia. However, the inevitable requisite visits to old friends, stumblings into former classmates, run-ins with old church acquaintances, and general interactions with the population of Marigold quickly poisoned that feeling of belonging. Old friends were wasting away and only former shadows of themselves. Former high school classmates still talked about that one tackle that they made together that one time on the football field at that one game senior year. Church acquaintances treated him like some apostate prince that had done some awful something that had potentially damned him, and it was up to them to fight the armies of Satan for control of Robert's soul. In the Marigold public? The random woman in Piggly Wiggly casually tossing out a racial epithet while having a discussion with her 10-year-old daughter. The random man at the gas station railing against the evils of those damned liberals touting the gay mafia's agenda and simultaneously decreasing his food stamps and Medicaid. The random woman so extremely obese, but trying her hardest to make good decisions in the grocery store, therefore grabbing Sunny D in the place of orange juice. Her not knowing any better, and the store not having any better. The little boy complaining to his father that the library didn't have any new books that he'd not read. At every turn, Robert slammed into the hopelessness that was Marigold. Hopeless not because they were bad people. Hopeless because crippling poverty and horrific educational and occupational opportunities stripped them of hope. Three to 4 days into his 10-day Christmas visit, Robert would be absolutely, utterly lost. If he wasn't at home in L.A., and he wasn't at home in Marigold, then where the hell was home? 20-year-old him would have answered that question by saying that friends are where home is. But those friends changed. Some had evolved into responsible adults with real lives far more concrete than his own. Some had devolved into lesser versions of the fiery dreams they'd once been in high school and or college. 25-year-old him would have answered that question by saying that family is where home is, and, to an extent, 35-year-old him would agree. Though Marigold was a painful place these days, his family was still his North Star. The only thing was, his family was shrinking at an alarming rate. So very many of them had passed at this point. His North Star was getting dimmer and dimmer with each passing year. "29 through 34-year-old him would have answered that question by saying that one's true love is where home is. But 35-year-old him now openly guffawed and scoffed at that answer. Investment in someone else is always dangerous, and that investment rested wholly on the other person's willingness to invest themselves too, to recognize the investment of their partner, to, well, hell, to give enough of a shit to not cripple someone and burn their version of home and their imagined future down around them. Bad breakup? You could say that. When it came right down to it, 16-year-old Robert knew far better what home was than 35-year-old Robert did. Rudderless, sailless, in the dark. He could go off on played-out, unoriginal metaphors all day long. At the end of that day, though, the simple fact of the matter was that, again, he was lost. He was scared. He was more confused than the unsure teenager that had been so very self-critical. What an odd place to be, coming back to that place so far down life's meandering path. Yeah. Clichés and canned adages are often quite problematic, and those two conflicting nuggets of knowledge that everyone loved to toss out were most problematic of all to Robert. You can never leave your home, and your home never leaves you. Once you leave home, you can never go back again. Two opposites, two truths. As Robert saw his family's double wide in his rearview mirror, bathed in red from his taillights, as he aimed his sedan's nose west toward the city where the angels sleep and the stars live, and that he fought so fucking hard to be in, he felt nothing. The emptiness disturbed him further. You can never leave your home, and your home never leaves you. Once you leave home, you can never go back again, but what happens when home does leave you? What happens when you can come back, but home has become something distorted and perverse? You become a ghost, hovering between realities, existing in the present but only being recognized as a phantasm of the past or a premonition of some skewed future or parallel possibility. He turned on a bass-heavy rap song to drown out the thoughts that threatened to overwhelm him. He eased down on the accelerator and sped up down the dirt road, heading west and hoping he might find home somewhere along the way. Thank you for listening to Where You Come From. All musical tracks in the background of this story come from freesound.org. The musical tracks are all being used under CC 0 1.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. Coming up next, you should stick around for the next installment of Jack Lee's novel, Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo. If you've not yet listened to the other riveting parts of Mr. Lee's stories, please, oh please go do so. There's a ton of them back in the backlog of the Prose stories, and you are really missing out if you don't. For those that are all caught up and ready to rock, let's go rejoin Telo in the very heart of enemy territory. Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo, a novel by Jack Lee. Parts 23 and 24, Reinforcements and Shield. Part 23, Reinforcements.
Where are the rest of the workers?
Two roach overseers were maintaining their part of the production line and noticed that the part of the line seemed to disappear. They had kept watch over their post and there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. But the line stopped suddenly. Where were the rest of the workers? And more importantly, where was the food?
Maybe the rest of them got lost again. That is why I do not think it is logical to maim the ants' heads. They would stay in line much better if they had sense of direction. But they could also talk and organize. We are only maintaining control over them so long as they cannot communicate with each other. Should we abandon our post and investigate the matter further? Yes. We have never had issues managing our end of production. Let's not start now.
The two roaches walked down the line, scanning anything in the distance that seemed out of the ordinary. They noticed the two dead roach carcasses in the distance. They saw the worker ants swarming and feeding.
They are consuming our brothers. How? They cannot perceive enough of their surroundings to rebel. Did something kill our brothers and the ants mistook them for sustenance? We must investigate.
The two guards began their trek to examine their dead brothers. Part 24. Shield. "We've been spotted," Telo said. She had been surveying the area to see where they might travel to find where the roaches and King were holding the queen. She noticed the two guards walking towards her position in the distance. "Take cover behind the dead bodies. When they get close, I'll kill them." "The line is further away. How are we going to know where line leads if can't follow? We surrounded by our sisters. They have no scent." Telo knew the attendant was right. Their sisters were not putting off any kind of scent trail for them to follow. Telo would have to capture one of the roaches alive and interrogate him.
What are you doing?
Telo heard the roach's voice in the distance. It was yelling at the group of workers. She took cover in one of the dead roach's hollow corpses.
What have you done? They cannot understand your words, sir. Who are our fallen brothers?
Telo pushed through her sisters. They had clogged the insides of the dead bodies and were gorging themselves on roach flesh. Telo felt her sisters' bodies rubbing against her. She reached out her antennae and felt their torsos and legs and heads. She felt conflicted. She had never lived in a colony with her family before. Growing up outside the colony, she had come to love her space. She had wanted her nurse to be her family when she felt alone, but now that she was surrounded and engulfed in her sisters' bodies, she just wanted to breathe. The carcass began shaking. The roaches were trying to shake the swarm of worker ants from their bodies. Telo's sisters stormed out of the corpses and pulled around each other, climbing over each other's bodies and ramming their pinchers into each other. They were lost. Telo reached out her feelers and felt the walls of the carcass. She felt a grinding movement on the other side. A piece of the shell wall was pried off, revealing a small opening. A roach's mouth part was busy feeding on its own, consuming the body of its own brother. Eating takes precedence over getting the workers back in line, I guess, Telo thought. Telo closed her eyes and visualized the feeding roach on the other side of the carcass. She blasted through the shell and grabbed the roach's leg with her pinchers and snapped it in half. The roach stumbled around off balance. She reached for its other front leg and ripped it from its body. His head crashed to the ground. His partner, frightened by the attack, darted away. "Go to get the others," the attendant yelled. "Tell them our plays." "It's faster than I am. They were going to know we were here anyway. There's no use. I'm not following." Telo continued to rip the legs from the other roach's body, sending each side of his body crashing to the ground.
"You are stupid and foolish,"
the roach said.
"You are bringing a fight in your direction with no army."
"I don't care." The roach tried to shift its weight and skirt itself away from Telo. Telo stood in front of it and gripped its head in her pinchers.
"End me quickly,"
he said. "Where is my mother?"
"Please, end me before my brethren arrive. I do not want them to observe me like this."
The roach looked at the half-eaten bodies of its fellow guards.
"Observe us like this."
"Who are they?" Telo bit down harder with her pinchers.
"The rest of you, I am not immortal like he is. You are not either. You will not live long after he comes."
"After who comes?"
"The king."
"Your king is not immortal. He just hasn't met me yet."
"Not my king,"
the roach said.
"Yours."
"The male you're hiding is not my king."
"It won't be long now."
"I'm going to leave you here for your kind to eat. I see that you're willing to feed on each other. You have us working to gather food for you, so you don't have to, and you still stop and eat each other."
"We consume what we are able." They will consume you when they get here as well.
Telo pressed her pincers together and slashed into the roach's head. Then I'll leave you here for after they are done with me. They'll still be hungry, no doubt. Telo gathered the worker ants into a group. If they were about to face an army of roaches, they would need to be in some kind of mass that could provide her cover so that she could try to fight roaches one-on-one. Attendant, help get everyone behind me. We'll have to travel in the direction of that line and see if we can get into some kind of position before they attack us. The group crept forward across the terrain. Telo knew that as fast as the other roach had run, it would not be long before they knew she was there, that they would know a rebellion had begun. She looked at the group behind her. She wondered how the workers were going to survive if she managed to free the queen. They would not be able to provide any kind of service for the new colony, and Telo and the attendant would not be able to care for the queen and her new young if they were having to gather food for a bunch of workers that would not fend for themselves. Telo knew they were mindless cattle at this point. Their only use was to absorb blows and distract her enemies while she fought. She had to survive at all costs, just like her nurse would want her to. The workers stuck their bodies close together and plodded slowly across the floor. Telo remembered the attendant, who walked beside her. The floor became damp. Telo scanned the terrain and noticed a pool of water. It would be a good place to stop and rest. She was beginning to feel the withdrawals of battle and became anxious. The worker ants crawled all over the pool and drank like they had never had water before. The attendant walked to Telo's side and rested beside her. Feelers are trembling. I know, I can't stop it. I can't seem to keep myself still. Soldier trait in your blood. Soldiers always looking for battle. What place does someone like me have in a colony? I'm feeling these urges and I don't know if I'll ever be able to control them. Lost yourself when you slaughtered that roach. Never had that desire. Desire makes colony operate. Hunters and gatherers need to explore. Soldiers need to kill. Guards to protect. Attendants care for queen. We act on desires. None of us understands the desires of others. How can we be sisters when we are all so different? We are parts of our mother, the queen. How does she not lose her mind? Queen starts colony, leaves her home nest, takes to air for nuptial flight with male, leaves drone to die, explores for place to have antlings, builds chambers, gives birth, gathers and hunts and raises young until they are old enough to do things for her. Queen does everything. All desires we have come from queen. Even fights? Has to protect colony until antling's old enough, yes. My nurse did everything for me, though. Her desire to raise young. You not turn out to be queen, raised a soldier, not her place, could have stayed with us and maybe kept her place. She never told me her desires. Only that she felt like a failure. That I was her failure. Telo, have to understand there are many ways to survive. She thought best to spread out and increase chances. I thought best to stay together. Queen has conflicting desires. She just focus on desires that will serve colony. When will I feel like I am part of our colony? I have always felt alone with my nurse. I feel alone now with the workers, with you. You'll feel like you part colony when you are with other soldiers. When you are with our mother. We are not meant to be alone. Only makes sense when we are together. Feel normal then. I only feel normal when I am killing. That is the only time I feel still. Nurse used to take me hunting for mites and I enjoyed it. But something changed inside me after the nurse had me attack that large creature in the clearing before she died. I even tried to fight her after. I tried to kill her. I'm afraid of what will happen with these workers. I know I cannot protect all of them. Your place is to kill, Telo. You're a soldier, you not guard.
You use workers as tool to kill enemies. What warriors do? You conflicted only because we're only family you known.
I knew my nurse. The attendant moved her eyes away from Telo and looked off into the distance. She spoke as if she no longer believed Telo's story either, just like the other ants didn't believe Telo's story.
Yes, I forgot, nurse. But after Queen creates more soldiers, you'll feel better about being yourself. Shouldn't fret about what you are just because you do not fit in with those around you just right now. I don't feel right anyway, away from Queen, caring from her.
But these workers will die. I can't protect them.
Are you willing to die for home? Home only works as each us plays our role. Right now our role is to help you. You're a fighter. We have to help you fight. Even if it means dying. If we don't, our queen, our mother, will never be free. How did your nurse die?
There were these insects flying in the air. They tried to inject their young into me. She got me out of the way. I don't even think she liked me.
The best thing was for you to survive. She died for you, for the colony. Like we all willing to die for you now.
Telo looked up from the pool of water. There was a dark mass in the distance, a dark cloud that was creeping closer on their position. They may get the chance to die for the colony soon, Telo said.
I'll push workers from the back. Get them into group. Hide yourself in the middle. Stay on move. You'll kill more roaches.
The mass of insects drew closer. Telo looked across the floor to see the long antennae and fast movements of the roaches. But the group was not approaching as fast as roaches would. Those are not the roaches. The attendant's eyes widened.
The abominations! The male soldiers, the royal guard!
Get the workers in a group now. Thank you for listening to Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo, a novel by Jack Lee. Parts 23 and 24, Reinforcements and Shield. Our guest novelist, Jack Lee, is from the American South. He enjoys clean water, fresh air, and tall trees. He writes when time and sanity allow. All noises and musical tracks in the background of the story are from freesound.org. The sounds and musical tracks are all being used under CC 1.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. That does do it again for us at Prose this week. Stay right there on the edge of your seats once more, waiting for the looming battle to overwhelm Telo, the attendant, and all those poor maimed ants. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with more stories. Until then, thank you so much for listening. And love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is always stranger than any fiction. See you next time.